welcome to day 3 of our 25th KMWorld here online this year. Right now, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and Kamran Khan is the president and CEO of Pureinsights. He's been with KMWorld for a number of years, but this is with a new venture. Users of enterprise search applications have always just wanted one simple thing: just make it work like Google. As Google search has gotten better and smarter, this now requires mastering AI technologies like machine learning, natural language processing, and knowledge graphs. Companies may struggle to keep up due to the lack of resources or the pace of change in technology. As some Pureinsights customers put it, my business needs search, but search is not my business. Our longtime search expert and popular KMWorld speaker, Khan shares the latest client success in delivering consistent innovation and quality user experiences for their search-based application. So please join Kamran.
Thank you, Jane. Nice to be here at KMWorld again. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. You can see my slide, right?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and very happy to be back at KMWorld. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do this in person. As Jane mentioned, I've been in the search business for quite some time, longer than I care to remember. And really what I want to talk about is how people want to make search in the enterprise work like Google. And just keying off Tracy's talk here, I think that search was one of the first applications that really disrupted the world. I mean, everybody uses Google, and Google led the way. And if you look at a lot of those applications that Tracy mentioned, Airbnb, Amazon, Prime Video, most of them are driven by search. Waze is driven by search. And so search has become so fundamental in all of our lives, especially on the internet, and Google has led the way. What most people have said to us over the years as we've been implementing hundreds, if not thousands, of enterprise search applications is, I just want my enterprise search to work like Google. And that's Google's fault. And by that, I mean, they've done such a great job of giving us a wonderful experience on the internet or wherever you see a search on Google, that people want it to work the same everywhere, whether it's on your favorite e-commerce website, whether it's on a publisher's website or a newspaper website. People just want to have the same experience that they get on google.com. So they've set the bar, and it's been difficult for people in the enterprise to make search work like Google. But we believe now at Pureinsights that there are technologies available that allow us to do this in in a fairly simple fashion. So I want to just kind of go through this at a high level to show you how we might make that work. So the first thing I want to say is that Google has changed over the years. If you look back, to the early 2000s, google.com experience was not the same as it is today. So today, this is an example of how a search might work. So here's a simple question. What is Tesla's revenue? And the first thing you might look at are the search engine results, which is what Google's been delivering for a long time. And these results are semantically correct. They're really good, accurate results. But if you look at the actual chart here, you'll see that we're seeing a knowledge card at the side, which gives you a lot more information about Tesla. You're seeing frequently asked questions and featured snippets, and you're actually seeing a direct answer that's coming from a different technology. So this is what Google looks like today, and this is what search users want wherever they see a search bar. And that's really what we're trying to achieve. Now, how is Google doing this? Well, it's really combining multiple technologies. So obviously, Google has a great search algorithm, and there are great search algorithms available in the open source, Elasticsearch and Solr being two of the most popular. But what Google is doing is they are combining AI technologies with search to enable that kind of experience. And I always like to define what I mean by AI when I say it, because it's quite an overhyped term. In this context, AI is machine learning, natural language processing, and knowledge graphs. Those are the three technologies that are being combined with search to create that user experience that you had before. What I want to do is give you some examples of how we're doing this with some of our customers in the enterprise. I think it was a couple of years ago while I was at Accenture, I did a KMWorld keynote where I was beginning to talk about how we might be able to use these technologies to mimic the Google-like experience. Well, 2 years later today, we're doing it now because those technologies are available to us. If you look at this particular demo that we've put together, this is an example of what we call extractive answers. And this is really using the machine learning part of AI to be able to get direct answers to questions. And it's just one way of doing this. So what we've done here is we've taken a BBC report on sustainability, and we've dropped it into the lower box here. Now the machine learning model that has been trained on lots and lots of different text analytics has never seen this text before. And now we can immediately ask a question like, how much will the BBC reduce emissions in direct operations? Because we have learned this text, we're able to not just go into the text and find the sentence, but actually extract that 46% answer from the text inside this document. So that's been done without any knowledge of this text in advance, but just using a machine learning model. And that's how you get the featured snippets in Google. It's exactly this technology. And it's actually Google's technology that they open source that allows us to do this. Here's another example that shows a slightly different spin on the machine learning. Here we're asking a question that really requires a sentence from the text. How will the BBC transition to net zero? What it's done is it's understood the text, and we'll talk about how this is working at a very high level in a second, but it's understood the text and it's gone in and given us the best sentence that might answer this question. Again, that's machine learning going in and automatically finding the right sentence. And finally, how will the BBC reach net zero? And in this text here, I know it's a bit small to see, but in its text it says this is how we intend to do it by 2030. So it's understood the context of the question, it's understood the text, and it's come up with the number, the date, the 2030 that answers that question. So this is a really powerful way to add to traditional search to get you that capability. So how this is working, and this is just really high level, is illustrated by this chart here. This is just another article that we are using to illustrate this. What's happening is the machine learning model is going in to the text and it's chunking up the paragraph. So it will take paragraph by paragraph. Then it will look 256 characters to the left, 256 characters to the right, and it will understand the context. And it will do that for every word in the paragraph. That's how it learns what this paragraph is talking about. It'll do the same with the question, and it creates vectors. And those vectors can then be matched. And that's how it's matching the question to the right piece of the answer. Now, the great thing about this is that this can be done in any language. So here it's being done in English, but because we're vectorizing the text, it can be done in any language. And then we're using another technology from Google again that allows us to then extract the 29.4 billion number that answers this specific question about what is a global annual profit from trafficking humans. So not only have we learned the paragraph, we've also extracted that number. So this is how machine learning works in the search context, and it's super powerful to add to to existing search applications. Here's an example of a different type of technology allowing us to get even better results or augment results. So here, what we're doing is we're using natural language processing. And this is data that we've got from one of our European government customers, and it's about projects. So Urbinat in this query is actually a project name. And we're looking for what locations that service this project are open today. So we ask that question, and what we're getting back is results from a knowledge graph. This is natural language processing, understanding the query, but going into a knowledge graph and coming back with this kind of knowledge card. First of all, we know its location, so we want to put it on a map. And so we can display this on a map, which is very helpful. But we also give some other information that might be useful. So this is similar to what is Tesla's revenue. You get the answer, but you also get all of the other information that you think might be interesting to you when you're asking about Tesla. Same thing with this particular project. And this has been done on corporate data or government data inside the enterprise. It's actually for public consumption, but it's being done with enterprise search. Another example here is that we want to actually extract some information. So what's the phone number for the city facilitators? We can not only just present information about the city facilitators, we can extract that phone number and present it straight away. Again, this is doing what Google does, but in the enterprise. And we've used a knowledge graph here, plus natural language processing. And finally, just as an example, we're not only extracting phone numbers, but you can also extract contract values, which is really important for this particular government agencies. People want to know what the contract value was. This is also stored in the knowledge graph associated with this project. So combining NLP and knowledge graphs is also powerful. And then you add that to machine learning. That's how you start to get the elements of making search in the enterprise Google-like. But other examples that are, maybe more user-friendly and more easier to consume. This is the kind of thing we can put on an intranet now. What's the current schedule for meeting room 1? You can go into the knowledge graph and present the answer immediately, as well as what's the capacity of a meeting room. So this is a fantastic technology to be able to give your internal users or your users on an e-commerce site access to that information that Google presents in such a great way. So those are new technologies that people should be using when looking at enterprise search. And I think that's really the focus of Pureinsights, is to bring those technologies to the enterprise and get that capability. We've been working in the search space for a long time. I'm now the CEO of Pureinsights, but as Jane mentioned, I was the CEO of Search Technologies that was acquired by Accenture. So we've worked with thousands of different customers implementing use cases in every industry that's out there, and probably every use case. And we are really excited about the possibility of improving the level of the search implementations we've done to what we call beyond search, creating that knowledge graph, creating that machine learning layer on top of existing search. And the way we want to do it is by building assets, because it can be tricky to implement these things. You can obviously go out and buy commercial solutions that incorporate some of these technologies, but you can also build them using your own existing search applications, open source applications. We're building a platform that we call the Pureinsights Discovery Platform that makes it easier for us to ingest content and push it into the search engine, into the knowledge graph, and apply that machine learning to enable that kind of functionality. We do consulting, we're building the technology, and we're also doing managed services. We really believe that search is fundamental, not just on the internet, and not just a disruptive technology on the internet, but used properly, it can be disruptive inside the organization. We've seen some people do that. One of the problems is that search is never done. That's one of our customers has said that. And we want to be able to help people to manage the search implementation going forward. So we're creating a managed service that we call Search Ops that can help augment the implementation and the management of a search application. So we'd encourage you to take a look at some of these AI technologies that will enable you to take search to the next level. We'd love to talk to you about how we might be able to help with that, but we are extremely excited at Pureinsights about the possibilities now that we can combine AI with search. So thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'll be in the question session at 12:15.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kamran. You always are fascinated by your talks, but I particularly liked your search is never done and the reuse of technology, as Tracy said, to rethink problems. And we will be continuing to do that with search, I'm sure. It's never done. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again in a couple of minutes. And right now, I want to introduce our next speakers who are doing a special spotlight session on crowdsourcing for KM. And we have two speakers who are coming from across the pond to talk to us today. We have Mette Knoll, who has a master's degree in art history from Utrecht University, specializing in modern and contemporary art. Since then, she's curated numerous exhibitions, published on the visual arts, and co-initiated culture initiatives such as Framer Framed in Amsterdam, and more recently, the Ministry of the Future. From 2009 until 2020, Mette was director of Museum de Lekkenhal, I don't know if I got that right, in Leiden, leading an intensive transition process that led to the festive opening of the museum in 2019 after a full restoration and expansion. Based on her future-oriented attitude, Mette has long been an advocate of renewal in the museum sector and beyond. Now, Michael Peter Edson is a digital strategist working at the intersection of technology, culture, and democracy around the world. He was co-founder of the newly emerging Museum for the United Nations, UN Live, and formerly was the director of web and new media strategy at the Smithsonian Institution. Michael is a Salzburg Global Fellow, a Fellow of the Getty Leadership Institute, and a distinguished presidential fellow, the Council on Library and Information Services, and serves as a juror for the MacArthur Foundation's 100 Million Change Initiative and Cumulus Green, a global design competition to find new design solutions to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Michael is currently writing The Age of Scale, a book about the impact of scope, scale, and speed in the modern world. He was named the Tech Titan Person to Watch by the Washington Magazine. So welcome, Michael, and Mette, take it away.
Thanks, Jane. I need to remember to give you a shorter bio.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's a little embarrassing, actually.
No. You guys are wonderful, and we're happy to have you.
Well,
carry on.
Happy to be here in Leiden, in the Netherlands, with Mette Knoll, whose biography makes me seem like a real lightweight. So we're going to dive into it. I'm going to start out talking about a certain interaction and a certain project that Mette is working on from my perspective as a kind of wayward American consultant, Ronin digital strategist. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mette to talk about how this problem space looked to the boss, the leader of this incredible initiative, the Leiden 2022 European City of Science. And the kind of the thread running through it all is, Jane has generously assured us, is actually a knowledge management problem, which is, how do you figure out what's important when the web, when digitality is so very, very vast, and you're working on a big challenge and you don't have a lot of time. So as is typical, I'm going to jump right into it. We're going to push you listeners off balance a bit with a video, and then we're rock and roll, and we're hoping to have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. Does that sound good, Meta?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Let's
I'm gonna,
go.
all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to share screen. And there it is, and click share, and go to full screen. Super cool. So, just moving some controls around.
You know that feeling when you don't quite grasp something? Welcome to the world of academia. We humans are an inquisitive lot, inclined to seek answers the moment we don't understand something. It's our way of trying to understand the world a bit better. But scientists know it's those very moments of uncertainty that are the most fruitful. That period of genuine curiosity, of not knowing, being open-minded, seeking, questioning, gaining new insights. During 2022, discover what curiosity can do for you. We'll be stimulating and challenging you for 365 days. We will spark your imagination, inspire, engage, and encourage you to think and rethink, and let everyone dive into the world of Leiden, European City of Science. We will escort you through our city, visiting all 101 neighborhoods. We will offer you a European platform for inspiring scientific conferences, and we will welcome you to our year of events, brimming with exhibitions, workshops, lectures, excursions, and much, much more. So, for 365 days, be amazed, blown away, inspired, and discover Leiden, European City of Science. 365 days curious.
Whoa!
You know that feeling?
Come on, go next.
You know that?
There we go. So that's now. And now I'm going to take you back to where Meta was sitting in February
Yes.
of this year as the new director of this enormous pan-European, but also intensely local initiative. And the big question here is, when you're starting a new initiative, how do you figure out what's relevant? This is not an atypical question. Sometimes consultants will call it reference initiatives or a competitive analysis, but it can be it's an easy question to ask, but it can be a very, very difficult question to answer. Mostly because, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when there were like 5 websites. There was one website in 1991. There are 1.2 billion websites as of January of this year, almost 2 million apps in the App Store, almost 3 million apps in the Google Play Store. There are roughly 1 billion things that you should want to know about. And we're curious people and we want to know about it all. So the problem space is almost so big that it's unanswerable, especially considering that so many of these websites and apps are dynamic. They're not the same for every viewer. They're not the same for every viewer every time they go in. Bottom left corner is a sitemap in 2002. Right side is a sitemap in 2021 from Wikipedia. How do you describe this from one day to the next? Furthermore, I'm trained as a visual artist. A lot of people in the creative industries, architects, designers, go through this group critique training in art school. This process, you put someone's painting up on a wall, you talk about it, you improve it, you think about it together. This technique is fantastic, but it fails with temporal dynamic creations like living websites, campaigns that involve people and are highly interactive, and apps. It can work, but it has severe limitations that go beyond our training. Consulting methodologies, just seeing this slide makes a little piece of me die inside. They have their purpose, absolutely, to see through the fog of now and begin to put some frameworks and structures around ideas, but they also have severe limits. So, if it's this hard, if it's this weird, why do it at all? Because the process and the discipline of doing it, of leaving your desk, so to speak, and looking out in the world, can be eye-opening and generative in its own right. I think that word generative is really the most important word in this whole business that we're all in together. So lo and behold, on middle of February 2021, Meta Knoll, who's also a Getty Fellow, we were at the Getty Leadership Institute together. I saw this message that she posted on Twitter. What is the most engaging, interesting, mind-blowing, and inclusive, accessible website and/or online campaign you've ever experienced in the field of art and/or science? Like, whoa, that is a big, cool question. She included this awesome picture of this little guy with the magnifying glass that really captured my heart. I really fell in love with this little guy, and I started looking into Meta's project. I'm dramatizing a little bit. I already knew a little bit about the project, but they're hosting the world in 2022. Leiden is a university town going back how far?
1575.
Going back to 1575, it's a university town. Free thinkers, the Pilgrims came from Leiden to Plymouth. It's an amazing city and an amazing culture. And I've had the privilege of doing a little work here at a pop-up event right outside Meta's old museum, where we were talking with two college kids who were talking about a bicycle lending program they had for disadvantaged youth in the city. It's a very civic-minded city, full of windmills and universities, and the end point of the process I'm about to tell you about was 54 projects that I kind of harvested thinking about Meta and her team and analyzed. Basically a set of references. Bill or Jane, I sent you both this link to usingdata.com, which is my blog, my home base. If you'd share that with participants, they can have a nugget here. We will also share these slides. I went through looking back on it, a 10-step process that you can use too. And I highly recommend this way of working. And actually Meta in the end can tell you whether it helped or not. I'm hoping she says a little. So step one, reach out. Meta Knoll absolutely did that. And that's a pretty courageous thing to do in this setting with a lot of institutions, the European Commission, the universities here, the city, to just open up and say, what blows your mind? I think that alone was pretty great. And she framed it quite powerfully. These are the qualities I'm interested in. This is the scope. This is the scope. She really gave everyone in the world something to go with. Brainstorming is its own topic. I use the word very loosely. But I started thinking about Meta's proposition and went to Google Jamboard. You can use Post-it notes or just whatever process you're comfortable with. But I started just throwing ideas down over a couple of days, anytime I thought of something in the shower. And step 4, I kind of did a card sort, I categorized, but not too much. I think it's very easy to the temptation to become very anal about categories is great. But I think, as you'll see later, all the interesting news happens in the white space between what we've been trained to think of as traditional categories. But this was useful. Platforms, campaigns, often I'll include a category of wild cards and challenge myself to come up with good stuff there. There we go. Step 5, explain yourself. Don't just throw some links at somebody. Explain what you're doing, why, who, what, where. And then I forced myself to come up with a little construct. For every link I thought was important, I was going to answer these 5 questions. What it is, why I thought it was important, a link to the website, a link to some more information about it from a third party, a review, a user review, an article, and then a sample of the content. I was going to do, if it wasn't worth thinking that through, it probably wasn't worth sharing with Meta and her team and anyone else who wanted to add to it. And here are examples with the link that Jane and Bill shared. You can see my blog posts on this and how I unpacked it. And if you don't know AI Dungeon from Janelle Shane has written about it really superbly. I totally recommend it. It's a gas. Step 6, own it. Own the frickin' details. Give enough of an explanation of the thing you're talking about and you care about, and you want other people to care about so that they can understand what's meaningful about it. So, how do you explain why TikTok is turning you on? I actually found a lot of great science communicators, especially people of color, and people who are not from traditionally powerful groups on TikTok. That's cool. Step 7, share it. Anyone can have a blog. I thought it would be really challenging and interesting to throw all this stuff out there in some kind of structure. Next step, frame it. So I think there's this spew of content. By answering those 5 questions, what, why, getting some third-party opinion, you're putting some order around that. But I think then it's important to step back and look yourself for what patterns there might be. So I forced myself to write a little explanation of what I did and how I was thinking so that other people could understand more easily. A colleague of mine, Leo Mullen, founder of Navigation Arts and other things, said, you need to make your ideas portable so that you don't need to be there to explain them. Great piece of advice, Leo. Step 9, a bias check. I really noticed in my group of things that they were mostly in English, mostly American, European institutions. I'm super eager to learn how somebody on the bus in Jakarta or Buenos Aires or Cape Town or the Bronx sees these things. Who is the most popular science blogger in India? It makes me crazy that we don't know that, because I bet they're amazing. 10, synthesize. Why? If you don't know the exercise called the 5 whys, which is something we learned and did together at the Getty, it's a very powerful way of questioning your own assumptions and drilling down to the values and the biases that drive your decision-making. 2, before I hand it over to Meta, 2 of the patterns that I saw when I asked myself why were, 1, the examples I found out in the wild that brought me the most joy were very seldom the kind of traditional precious jewel boxes that institutions want to build and want their public to love. Sometimes I love those things, but very often they were the strange ones, the one-offs, Teen Vogue talking about climate change rather than, an institution doing it. That really seemed to me to spark the kind of joy and curiosity that Meta and her team seemed to be after. And second, and I think this is really important looking at what Meta and her team have done, I'm blown away and inspired by it. A lot of the examples I found the most interesting didn't fall into the neat categories we're trained to think about: website, app, something digital, an event. They were more like the world is today, kind of a mashup. Knowledge is a mashup. Life is a mashup between different kinds of things, and we're all constantly remixing between what's on our phone, what's in our head, what's in a book, what we talk about with our friends and neighbors. So with that, like super blast, I'm gonna hand it over to Meta and let her take it over.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much. As you may have understood by now, we are a startup based in Leiden, the Netherlands. And at that time, at that moment in time in February, we were looking for inspiration on how to put ourselves forward into the world. And you can imagine that it must have been great to have such a resourceful inspiration from Michael Edson. So for those of you who are wondering what we are going to be in 2022 a 365-day science festival, which is not only about science, but also about knowledge, about art, and also about expertise, crafts, anything that concerns the concept of human knowledge, because we aim to connect science with society, both locally, but also on European levels. So why? I remember really well, really clearly hearing someone in your country say, I don't think science knows actually. You know, we live in this time of deep fake, filter bubbles, post-truth. We need to do something with that. We need to reposition the relationship between science, between scientists and citizens, and seek for new models. So that's very much what we would like to do. But how, you know, how do you do that? Well, for one thing, we chose as an overarching narrative for the whole year, who knows? Because who knows? Who has the authority on knowledge these days? But who knows all the things we don't know yet? I mean, the biggest part of our brains, we haven't any clue how they work. 96% of the universe, we don't even have any, we totally don't have a clue. So there's a lot of work to do. But first, for us, the question was, okay, as a new organization, as a startup, we need to get our communication stuff together. We have to develop a visual identity, a website, social media campaigns, etc. And that's the point when I tuned in on Michael. And of course, through Twitter, because I thought, let's just put this quest for help out and see what happens. And that has been really incredible because so much has happened. I mean, Michael just briefly guided you through it. I can only say go to his website and check it out because it's really awesome. All the stuff he brought together. And to us, for our team, it really helped us to follow the path towards where we are now. So first, what we did, we asked for help. And then we were willing as a team to dive deep into the problem zone. You know, we didn't go around it, we went right in the heart of it. And then, of course, you're a bit shaken and you need to process all that info. So we did team sessions trying to analyze what we gathered and see what learnings we could take along in order to define what should we do. And then, of course, that's all really nice, but in the end, you have to make it real. So a few learnings out of this whole process. So we're talking February of this year, it's now November. Only last week, we presented our new visual identity and we presented the new website. So this is really fresh things I'm showing you now. So what have we learned during this process? First of all, I remember really clearly when Michael showed all the websites, or we went through all those lists that he made, that I thought, oh, wow, this is interesting because I didn't expect it to, but it's really true. The messy stuff wins. You know, the most original, the most authentic, the kinds of communications where people would just let go of control and build on trust. And now that's something we find really hard these days. And how to allow spontaneous, original ideas to win from the fixed formats. And how to make sure that you don't let the rational get in the way of the intuitive. And these are really hard things if you are so much stuck in your pathway, so to say. So we had to open up, which also meant we had to exceed our own expectations of what we wanted to make. And certainly we had to let go of the expectations of others. So the messy stuff wins. Let go of control. Then, of course, if you do that, you have to be generous. So we know that bottom-up inclusivity, which we are aiming at, but it only will work if we are not only once, but if we are performing continuous mileage checks, right? And it's also one of the things that I took from this resourceful online Twitter action and what Michael brought together is that you have to keep on reaching beyond your own networks, because as a team, we were really surprised to see how committed Teen Vogue contributors actually were. Sometimes it's there where you don't expect to find it, it's right there. And then, of course, it's not enough to work on public awareness or public engagement. We really have to take the next step into actual public participation in order to create real ownership with your audiences. So then learning number 3, this is an interesting one because it was already there, but we didn't know. We didn't know that this year was all about curiosity because, you know, curiosity is so big. So you have to open the boxes, you have to take unexpected corners and tempt everyone. to look at things differently. And we knew at that point that we had to invite surprise and delight in order to enlighten people. And I think the power of curiosity reached far beyond these classical target groups. So I said to my team, okay, let's abandon the whole set of criteria and thinking about target groups. And let's also let go of prefix media strategies. What we will do is we will focus on specific interests of people. Because if you're interested in like the stars or astronomy, I don't care whether you're a 10-year-old girl or a Nobel Prize winner, right? Or if your brother has a kidney disease, then I'm sure that when we do an activity on kidney diseases, you will be interested. And you will be, no matter where you were born, in which area, what your income is, what your level of education is. So that's the interesting part, is if you really focus on these topics that people are interested in intrinsically, then you can just let go of all the frameworks that you learn in school, you know, about target groups, etc. So, and then of course, this one, the hardest part, but choose. So really choose what's the essence of your project and how can you make that even bigger in order to create more impact. And for us, this became really clear during the process. It was all about curiosity. It was the concept of 365 days, and it was about creating ownership. So this is what we did between January and July of this year, the first half year. We co-curated the wall, as we called it. It's right there behind me. And we will go and check it out and have a look, because it's absolutely crazy. But from every angle, every corner in town and nationally came ideas for curiosity sparking, easy accessible topics on a range of subjects. And the closing date was July 1st. And then I can assure you, we could have filled 3 years instead of 1. So many people came up with ideas. It was really heartwarming, really fantastic. So, and now what? Show me. We will show you. So, Michael, if you shift to the live.
Yeah, I'm going to stop screen sharing, everyone, and take Meta
We're
on.
going to do a little. Right?
Yeah. And I'm not going to trip.
Okay.
And I'm not going to
So
fall.
we're going to start here, right here. On January 1st, in the lower corner, it's 20 years of Euro. You can see that? So this is a Saturday, this is a Sunday. Then we will have a Monday. So this will be 52 Mondays here, right? Until the very end there. So these are clippers that we just hang on the wall, 365 of them, in order to define these subjects. So for example, on Tuesday, April 5, it will be all about Easter Island. Now you can scan the code and then you will be directly on our website to see what you can do.
So wait, do that again. We need to make sure that happens. Yeah, pick another day.
Pick another day.
What,
okay, USA.
Wait. USA.
April 19th.
Okay, so wait, let me get the phone in the picture.
You got it?
So Meta's just scanning the QR code.
Yeah, so I'm doing that now. Oh wait, it has to rethink. Let me see. Just took a bit too long. There we are. Up. Yeah. So here's our website.
So,
USA, 19th April, and here are the different activities on that very day.
So let me give you a sneak peek. These QR codes are going to be everywhere in the city and on some very unusual objects. And I've met people in the street and told them about this project and shown a picture of the QR codes on my phone. And within a second, they're in.
Yes. So the QR code, you remember Alice in Wonderland, right? And we were talking with the team about this rabbit hole that you dive into. And then you enter another world, a world that you didn't know, that you didn't expect there to be. And we realized while processing this with the companies we were working with to develop our visual identity, that in this world of QR codes that we're currently living in, the QR code itself is a digital loophole that leads you to this other world. So if we're on April 25, it will be all about DNA. And you can scan the code of DNA. It's a unique code. And we can generate 9,999 QR codes. So that's fantastic news for anyone who wants to be an owner of the day, because that's what you can do. So in the Netherlands, May 3 is the National Day of Empathy. So together with empathy specialists of Leiden University, you can develop an activity in your own neighborhood, class, or our club, whatever, a street around empathy. You can become an owner of that day. And the QR logo will be yours, and you'll be able to organize something in your own neighborhood.
And you're giving grants to,
yes,
in some cases?
Yeah, small grants can be given, like a bit of seeding money to help people organize it. And yes, so that's fantastic. So we're looking for 365 owners of the day, and I can assure you that many people already said they would love to do that. By the way, we still have to begin the whole year. So it will start January 1st, 2022. And then shall I tell about the calendar? Right? Yeah. So that's here. So look at this. So when we got this 365 topics, we thought it would be really nice to put them all in a tier of calendar. So that's what we did. So here we are.
Copernicus. So
yes.
I bet that someone in the audience can take a picture of their screen and get that QR code, and then they will be taken to the day for Copernicus. And then if they want, they can suggest an event, right? Or enter this world where it's not Meta and her team doing everything. It's the people.
Yes, and let's try this one.
Okay.
To conclude with, right? Okay. So that's our logo, and you'll end up right on our website. See that?
And I've seen this happen in the wild.
Yeah, so it's happening in the wild already. Yes, so now let's wrap this up a little bit. We will go back to the presentation.
If Mr. Edson can share his screen again.
Please do.
There
we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So to show you a few more examples of what we aim to do. So this is it. The format is, it's about 365 days of curiosity, right? So this is the website. You can dive into it, and it's kind of jungle of topics that you can move through. Check it out and you'll see. This is one of the examples of the daily topics. This is not about Europe. It's about a moon that is close to Jupiter called Europa. This is how we will put this into a marketing campaign and put all these QR codes, all these digital loopholes out there in order to trigger people to know more or to seek for. I just hope that people, won't stop scanning those QR codes the whole year. This is also nice. What we did, we bought 3 little mobile cars, vans from Italy, tuk-tuks, and they will drive throughout town in Leiden for a project we call Knowledge Throughout Neighborhoods. And on the back, as you can see, is a little post box where you can send in your questions, because dare to ask. I did ask on Twitter what to do. Well, we hope that for a full year, people will take the courage to pose questions and to ask, and we will try together with Citizen Science Lab in Leiden to answer as many questions as we can, because who knows? Oh yeah, and then another sip of beer, a sip of science. A local brewer brew a beer that we used to present the whole year last week. And it's already a huge success. Many people like it. And the idea is that you're in the cafe, you take a sip of science, you talk about this stuff, you scan the code. It's a conversation piece, but it's also good beer. It's really good. It's a good local beer. Did you taste it?
I haven't opened mine yet.
You should. Okay. And of course, who wouldn't want to have a t-shirt like that, So to wrap this up, the question is, the year is still to start, right? So what's next? We just launched a website last week, so we just did the job, but please note that only 10% of the job is being done. You know, the website still needs to be filled. We're still working on it. We still need to add more toolkits for participants, for stakeholders, for ambassadors, in order to enable everybody to work with the stuff that we've developed. And we need to integrate those learnings even more at this stage, because we're only starting. I think in my view, the website and the visual identity, the whole communication strategy is like a piece of clay that we have to work on now. It's a rough material and we still need to shape it, and we need the public, we need our audience to do that, because our communication strategy is to make it circular. So you have an activity, this will result in all kinds of communicable, how do you say that in English, stuff like pictures, like quotes, like little films, maybe a podcast even, or beautiful projects, which we will use in our communication strategy. And then to empower people with that example to generate new activities. So it's a circular way of communication that allows, hopefully, also these spontaneous interactions throughout the year when we start. In order to create, of course, that's what we want to do, real ownership and real connections between scientists and citizens. Well, it's a lot more to tell. I will stop here. I hope that, oh yes, of course, we developed the whole website together with the two Leiden-based firms, GH+O and S Digital, and we're really grateful. Please check in 31st of December, 2022, it's right there at the end, at the bottom, and ask me how it went, Michael, because we're just at the start. Thank you so much.
What a great talk, Meta. High five.
Check.
Terrific. You guys are great. You guys are great. And I'm going to bring everybody back for our chat here, because it's so interesting, the themes that develop, you know, within your talks. I loved it when Tracy began, you know, talking about the rethinking and using new technology to rethink, and Kamran talked about, you know, using the new technologies to help enterprise search, and then Meta and Michael talking about, you know, rethinking crowdsourcing, getting that KM into action. And Tracy, are you there too? Yes, there she is. There she is. There she is. Excellent. So, you know, I love the whole theme around rethinking. And I think that's, you know, coming out of the last year and a half, 2 years, where we've been sort of hunkered down. I think this is really great. And any comments just to start about rethinking from any or all of you?
No, but I think you hit the nail on the head, Jane. That here in Europe, a project Meta's working on has asked Europeans to help really basically completely reinvent European culture and the economy by 2050. As part of climate action, part of pandemic recovery and the Green Deal. And so, for example, one of the goals is by 2050, we're going to separate consumption from economic prosperity and growth. Like, boom.
Earlier.
Okay, yes, well, yes. Hopefully earlier, but these kinds of massive and not optional changes in society are all around us.
Yep.
And I think it's really challenging every thoughtful leader, from the family dinner table to the top of government and at every piece in between, to rethink what they're obliged to do. Yeah. And
it was interesting yesterday, as I said, our speaker from the World Economic Forum, you know, showed the technologies that they are using to not only work with their partners and the key people in the forum, but to bring in people globally to participate more in the kinds of big problems and issues in the world as well. So that's great. Kamran, you were going to comment, say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that the two presentations were great, Tracy, Michael, and Meta's, and I think what it illustrates to me is that people need to be less afraid of using new technologies to be able to push things to the limit. You know, whether it's in search or in the KM space that everybody's been talking about. I really think that using these fantastic new technologies today is absolutely fundamental if you want to stay ahead and do the great things that were illustrated in those two presentations.
Yeah, yeah. And Tracy, did you want to have a word around the rethinking as well?
Sure. So I think one of the outcomes, unfortunately, of COVID over the last 2 years is it really forced a lot of companies to use the technologies that have existed, but they've resisted using because of fear. And they got thrust into survival mode and saw, wow, the technology is here and it works. And whether it was in the media industry, broadcasting from home, restaurants figuring out online delivery, health clubs figuring out home workouts. And so it was a sad event, but it really showed people that you are resilient, you are creative, and the technologies have existed and they're getting better because now we've become this whole pilot for technologies through this sad event.
Yeah, yeah, Indeed. Yeah, interesting. Another theme was around, you know, the curiosity, and it was interesting. The other day, somebody mentioned, oh, I know, it was Kim Glover, mentioned my title with Dysart and Jones, who I work with, is the curator of curiosity, which I've had for a number of years. And by the way, Michael, I stole from Paul Holdengraber, who was at the New York Public Library and did interviews with all sorts of artists, celebrities, and whatnot. And he is an incredible guy. But it's all about creativity, curiosity, and where do you get those ideas? And Tracy, you started talking about that around, you know, the interconnecting of knowing, the using customer and vendor guidance, and, you know, using your own workforce for innovation. Did you want to comment on that a little bit more?
Sure. So one of the things you think about because of remote and virtual organizations is the zip code. You know, in the past, we were always had to hire in the zip code of where our office was. And that limited the talent that we could pull from. By taking that away, we could pull in teams, which is what I did, from anywhere in the world if they had the right skills for what we were looking for. But on the individual level, it is also about zip code because employees were forced to move or live in places that didn't necessarily, you know, fit their lifestyles. And by removing that forced go to the office, now people could live somewhere else and take care of their family members or have different lives. So I think this remote virtual organization is going to stay on a certain level because now we are understanding the value of talent and experiences pulled in from many locations.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Kamran, did you have a comment there?
No, I just completely agree with what Tracy's saying there. I just, you know, we've experienced exactly the same thing in our organization.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And somebody was just commenting in the chat about, you know, conferences too. Like we are able to bring in people like Meta from Leiden and, you know, Tracy from the other coast. And, you know, we could have done these in person, but you also can bring in a lot more. And I think people are sort of now trying to look at, are we going to make our conferences hybrid? Well, for now, Information Today is hoping that they're going to be in person for 2022. And, but I think, you know, I think we're used to perhaps having the odd presentation from somebody who is not actually physically there. And, you know, we're used to looking at screens, but we don't want to get Zoom Zoom fatigue either. So I
But
wanted
Jane,
to
what
ask,
about the, the question I think is also about people attending the conference virtually, even if you have the in-person event. I think that would be, if you do it in DC again next year, it'd be great to have that broadcast out to the global
Yes.
community.
Yes, and yeah, you're absolutely right that people can't always travel to get to these events and whatever. And so is there an option to perhaps get pieces of it? We have tried some in the past in terms of sending out our keynote speakers, for instance, having those streamed, but it's an interesting world, and definitely disruptive, as Tracy said, is that digital transformation. Lots of organizations were forced into it, and many of them were already prepared. So it's quite interesting when you look at, some of the consulting companies like Bain that's been, global for years. They have all sorts of teams that are global. They're used to having meetings at certain times so everybody can be there. It's very, very interesting. What about questions for each, or Michael, you wanted to say something there?
Well, I'd want to give Meta the mic,
Yeah.
because she's been intently focused on a lot of these new developments, but also I'm remembering after the stock market crash in 2009, Cisco had a 20,000 person annual conference that they would fly people to every year, sales conference. They canceled that on the spot, went virtual, ran a alternative reality game to tie people together. This isn't new necessarily, but Meta, what's your
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, hearing you, that to me, it doesn't matter what you can do, because we know what we can do. It's how
Right.
we use those tools, how we
Exactly.
use those digital tools, and more specifically, how we use them differently than before. Because what we did, I don't know whether you liked it or not, but it's nothing new that we did. I mean, it's not spectacular from a technological viewpoint. It's just what we try to do is to use it differently. And in order to do so, you have to use your creativity and your imagination. And we live in an era of transition, major transition. We cannot keep doing what we did. So
Right.
it's a challenge for every one of us, whether we're creative or not, to use the creativity of people who can do that, who have the power of imagination,
Right.
to come up with new formats, new ways of doing stuff. I really, really believe that we need that imaginative power.
Yeah, it's a challenge for all of us. And I keep going back to, in the 1980s, actually, I was fascinated by a futurist, Joel Barker, who talked a lot about paradigms. And, we get into our own frame, and, that's the way things are. And it's very hard sometimes to see things that are outside of that. And that's where your crowdsourcing brings in so many more new ideas. Or Tracy talking about, utilizing the people within the organization to get the idea box or whatever going, because ideas can come from anywhere, whether it's inside the organization, whether it's at the lowest level of the organization, whatever. It's really interesting. Meta, did you want to say some more there?
Jane, just that I really agree with you. It's really power to the people. If you want to generate new ideas, open up to new people.
And open up to young people.
Young people.
we were talking with Eric Bukestein, who's been active in a lot of your conferences, Jane, and he just sort of looks down in his beer and says, if you want to change an organization, if you want to change habits, put young people in charge, not just symbolically in charge, but give them the budget, let them make decisions.
Absolutely. And actually the princess in the Netherlands, whose name is escaping me right now, gave a talk for me a while ago.
That's right.
And she talked about the councils that they have within corporations and government and all over that have children, that have, teenagers involved. And, it reminded me of that Australia example of the kid who said, I want to start my own airline. and he started a whole conversation with the CEO of Qantas. Oh, another story, Meta. Okay.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
a-
shall I tell it why? You know, these are the little shoes of my nephew. He's now 5. You know, in 30 years, he will be 35.
Yeah.
You know, what will his life be like?
He's the guy with the
Really?
magnifying glass.
He's the one with the magnifying glass. So I really think we need to shift our habits
Yep.
towards long-termism. You know?
Yeah.
Every
And you know, I
decision-
totally agree with you. Yes, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter and a daughter of my daughter, who I put on the computer at 3. You know, so that's quite a long time ago. She's now the head of a software company, but her daughter can use a tablet now to do all sorts of stuff. Like she knows some more than I do at 2. It's like, to me, it's incredible. And again, Tracy, there's something for you, is the development of skills, you know, the retooling of some of us, but the incredible speed with which young people are grasping and learning and creating. Would you like to say a little bit more about that, Tracy?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think you have to remember that there's, I did something called power for pairings, where I would take a very experienced person and pair them with a technology expert, because there's benefits in both. You know, I don't discount maturity and experience and process understanding. That's a very valuable and hard thing for a young person to learn when they come into the office. On the other hand, it's just as challenging for someone who did not grow up with technology to learn it as quickly as someone who does. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of things that people can do is create these powerful pairings, whether it's through mentorships, whether it's through war rooms, you know, or having, you know, fast adopters, you know, do a pilot so that you can really show the benefits. Because people on the less experienced side want to see, you know, how do I shortcut to get experience? And people in the technology who are lacking skills want to see, how can I shortcut to get to technology faster? And I think that's where leadership comes in.
Okay,
Yeah.
I forgot we were finishing at 12:15. So these guys will be in the networking area to continue this conversation, and we will see you tomorrow for a keynote, but enjoy your afternoon sessions. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.